This week we are reading two Parshiot, Parashat Behar and Parashat Bechukotai. Parashat Behar begins with the words, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Bahar Sinai Lemar. God spoke to Moshe at Mount Sinai, and continues with the law of the sabbatical year. And Rashi asks the famous question, Ma yin Shmita Eitzel Har Sinai? Why does the Torah connect the laws of Shemitah, the sabbatical year, specifically with the fact that God spoke to Moses at Mount Sinai? One might have expected the Torah to say God spoke to Moses from the tent of meeting, from the Mishkan, from the sanctuary, which is the central institution of the book of Vayikra. Rashi has his approach. Nachmanides, the Ramban, has his. And among other things, the Ramban points out that the Parsha of Behar begins by saying God spoke to Moses at Har Sinai, and talks about the sabbatical year, and Parashat Bechukotai, which contains within it the admonition, the tochacha, the blessings and the curses. That the curses, the description of what will happen if we don't keep the covenant, don't fulfill the laws, don't obey God and God's voice. In that lengthy admonition of chapter 26, the Torah speaks in generalities about mistakes, sin, but only one particular prohibition is mentioned, and that is the failure to observe the sabbatical year, the failure to observe the Shemitah. So the Ramban understands that the Shemitah is being used, the sabbatical year is being used by the Torah as a symbolic mitzvah, as an observance and a practice which represents, in a sense, all the commandments. And the Ramban understands it in this way. Of course, the sabbatical year at its heart, at its core, of course, is called Shabbat, the Sabbath, which in the book of Exodus is the most central covenantal mitzvah. It's in the Ten Commandments, it's twice in conjunction with the building of the Mishkan, it's connected to the story of the manna which falls from heaven in chapter 16. So the Ramban understands this way. The Ramban says that in reading the book of Vayikra, we must read the book of Vayikra in conjunction with the previous book of the Torah, the book of Exodus. In the book of Exodus, we stood at Sinai. Sinai was not just a set of laws, but a covenant. The tablets are called the tablets of the covenant. But before we could actually receive the tablets, we construct the golden calf. In constructing the golden calf, we are breaking or at least suspending the covenant. And then begins the great work to reconnect with God, to reestablish the covenantal relationship. In that covenantal relationship, part of it was a set of commandments that the Torah calls the Book of the Covenant, chapters 21, 22, and 23. In that list of commandments, practices, there's a verse about the sabbatical year. The Torah takes now, in the end of Vayikra, after the golden calf, after the work of reconnecting with God and allowing God to dwell amongst us, which is the Mishkan. The book of Vayikra continues, says the Ramban, with the idea of the Mishkan, and concludes with the blessing and the curse. And the blessing and the curse is the Torah's way of saying, we are now going to reformulate and re-emphasize the covenant, which was suspended at Sinai when we built the golden calf. And Moses negotiates the relationship between God and the people. And the people, through their repentance and God's desire to dwell amongst the people, can establish the Mishkan. At the very end of the book of Vayikra, in two of the last three chapters, the Torah then says, let us now reformulate the covenant. Let's talk about the opportunities, the challenges, and the potential pitfalls of not observing the covenant. So the Torah begins Behar with God speaking to Moses at Har Sinai. And we end the covenantal admonition of chapter 26 with another verse that mentions Sinai. These are the laws that God gave Moses at Mount Sinai. The Torah then in Vayikra continues the story of the Exodus and holds the sabbatical year, the Shemitah, which in its context is about dependency on God. The Torah holds the people accountable for their actions and also reformulates the Sinai covenant and describes the opportunities of blessing that the people have if they follow God's path. Shabbat Shalom.